2026 sees me travel the length and breadth of England to run a marathon per week in each of its 39 historic counties. Why? To raise funds for Tommy's, the charity that does incredible work to try to end the heartbreak of baby loss. I'll be joined each week by someone who has their own story of loss, their own rollercoaster journey, their own reason to be there. This podcast shares those stories in the hope that they can bring awareness to an often undiscussed topic and even, perhaps, a flicker of light in someone's darkness. You can follow the runs, the stories, and donate to the cause at marathonsformiracles.com. Enjoy. Hello, welcome to week 24 of Marathons for Miracles. We are departing this week from the southwest. We've been in the southwest for a bit too long, so we are returning to the centre of it all, and we're running in Surrey this weekend coming, but more accurately, we're going to be starting in London and heading out along the Thames. So yeah, less of our pooting around the countryside that we've had for the last few weeks, and no more of that West Country twang. But although actually you've got West Country links as well, haven't you, Jonny?
Yeah, I'm in South Gloucestershire at the moment. So
there you go.
Yeah,
so
that's where I live most of the time. So yeah.
So we were actually in Jonny's neck of the woods last week, but he didn't get that gig, unfortunately. But we'll come on to that later as to why that is. An interesting one this week, slightly different perspective, which we'll come on to, and some fundraising efforts that put mine to shame. So lots to discuss. But Jonny, thanks so much for joining us, and for being involved with the challenge as a whole. It's great to have you on board.
No, thank you so much for having me.
No, not at all. So we will kick off in the usual fashion and ask what it is that led you to be involved with Marathons for Miracles, and your links to sort of Tommy's and their cause.
Yeah, awesome. Well, yeah, thanks again for having me. So yeah, I guess a slightly different perspective from everyone you've run with so far, and everyone you've had kind of on the podcast, in that my interest in Tommy's, or kind of first seeing Tommy's and therefore Marathons for Miracles, came through an experience of my sister and her husband. So back in August 2021, my sister and her husband lost their baby Ness at 38 weeks of pregnancy, and then Ness was born a few days later. So obviously that was a massive shock for my sister, husband, and also the wider family. So that really, I guess, to be frank, I hadn't heard much about stillbirth or, miscarriage, hadn't really ever been discussed as a friendship group amongst my friends. And that kind of opened my eyes a bit and opened family's eyes and stuff to how prevalent this is, how many people go through these experiences and everything. So I guess since then it was, going around my sister and her husband, supporting them as far as we can. But then as a family, it's kind of grieving, healing, and kind of doing what we can to support them. And I guess for me, a big thing is, it's obviously an area that's incredibly, incredibly difficult, especially when you don't know a lot about it, to navigate or to think of how to navigate. And then so it's been kind of learning more. Also for me, it's been about, how can we contribute to the work that Tommy's are doing and others are doing in this space, fundraising, etc. So my family actually set up a charitable organization called the Ness Fund. Ness Fund essentially has a few different aims, but the primary one is to essentially support Tommy's to increase research and understanding of stillbirth, and for the past few years has been funding a PhD student to do further research on I'll get the pronunciation of this right, delayed villus maturation, which was the only found potential cause of Ness's death. So, the Ness Fund has been funding that research over the past few years, and I think the results have just come out or coming out shortly. So that's been working with Tommy's, and the PhD student Sharon Amsoni and Professor Alex Heasel, which I'm sure a lot of people listening to podcasts and part of this experience are very well aware of. So that's kind of what we've been doing over the kind of past few years, and I guess my way of showing kind of support to my family, especially my sister and her husband, is fundraising, going out and raising money to kind of contribute to this, so that fewer families have to kind of, have that experience of stillbirth, miscarriage, and so on. So yeah, that's kind of short snapshot of how I came to be involved with Tommy's, and therefore, obviously, I saw you posting around doing this, and I was like, yeah, I can do a bit of running, and Tommy's is a cause very close to my heart, so was keen to support wherever I could.
Amazing. We will come on later, I guess, to how a marathon is. We can have the debate as to whose challenge was harder. I don't think you'll win. I think yours is hands down, but we'll come on to that. But as ever, we have conversations every week about trying not to sort of compare experiences, and certainly from the perspective of like ranking them, if that's the right way of putting it. Like every loss is devastating, no matter when it happens. I, the idea of having a loss at that late stage is, to me, it really hit really hard. So I'm really sorry for your sister and her husband, and obviously for you as a family. Really tough to go through, but it's incredible as ever to see how people turn these things around and look to do something positive and help others through that might be going through similar times. It's obviously something that we're hoping to do, and it's great to see that others are having similar ideas. So well done for that. Just to dig into the events in 2021 a little bit more. Firstly, in the run up to the loss, what was this sort of? You mentioned it obviously being a big shock and something that you in particular weren't necessarily familiar with. Was that a first experience of loss for them and for the family more widely, or is it something that they've been?
No, it wasn't. I believe. I think had earlier losses as well, which all obviously hit hard. So it was, again, I think it was, I wasn't not aware of miscarriage and stillbirth and everything, but I just think especially when you're on the outside looking in or whatever, it's something that there is definitely a apprehensiveness of having that conversation or touch on it. It's just such a delicate subject for the right reasons, right? But
Yeah,
it's for those very reasons, it's incredibly easy just to brush under the table and stuff. So no, I believe, and there have been other experiences within the family of loss in different ways and shapes and forms. But that obviously was one that just hit incredibly hard. My sister and husband are fortunate now to have, so I have two nieces on their side, and I have a nephew on my brother's side, and my brother's wife is expecting as well. So look, very fortunate in that regard. So my sister had one child already, lovely little girl who's now 7 called Selkie, and she's since had another baby called Bessie. But yeah, so yeah, it kind of felt, it wasn't completely new to the family, but I think at that late stage, I think there is a, and although it could be rarer and everything, there is a kind of expectations, all's fine, and you're getting excited about having this, not that you're not excited at an earlier stage, but you're expecting to have this new family member, have a new niece within the next week or two, right? So it's kind of that's kind of what's shock. So I was on a holiday in Italy at the time, actually, where my dad called me, and I just remember being like, yeah, something's wrong immediately when you get a call like that. And obviously it was just a shock. And again, like just, never had to deal with anything. There's so many different emotions within that. So obviously, look, there's the absolute shock and despair at obviously losing a loved one, a little niece that obviously never got to meet. But then there's just the devastation, obviously, for my sister and her husband. I mean, this comes back to, I'm just in absolute awe of you, your challenge, what you're doing, but everyone you've spoken to and everything. Just like, it's no matter when, it's just the most unimaginable loss. And I just can't believe the strength that everyone has shown, and they're sharing their stories and everything. And it's just, that's part of, as a brother looking in, it's kind of, yes, there's obviously this massive loss for my little niece, but not like just thinking my sister and her husband and family are just in so much pain and not really knowing how to, you can't say anything at that stage, right? Like it's just pain. It's just, so all you can do is, I guess, be around, be there. And I don't think you can even, well, look, this is not even my view, but I guess like there's just such little you can say that will be comfort at that stage, or that I knew what to say. I'm sure the right people know the right things to say, right?
No, I think you're right. I think the one thing that comes up quite often is that there are a lot of things not to say.
Yeah.
There's lots of things that people do say that are very well meaning and are aimed at being helpful, but actually turn out to not be.
And I'm sure I wouldn't be surprised that I've never had this conversation with my sister, but I wouldn't be surprised if I even said a wrong thing or two. Like, I don't think I did, but I wouldn't be surprised if, there is something, but that was definitely something that I was very conscious of and I would have to say at the time, I did a bit of kind of reading or whatever, just to try and understand what exactly that, right? What not to say.
Yeah.
But yeah, undoubtedly, it's incredibly delicate and it's incredibly hard to kind of know what to do or say at that point in time.
And also, I think when it's coming from a brother, or we've had a lot of these conversations from like the husband's perspective, when it's coming from that person, you sort of know that it's well-meaning, and you know that it's it's said from a place of love, and I just want to help. I think the really unhelpful comments come from people who are sort of work colleagues or people that you meet. You go, oh well, you can always try again. There'll always be the next one, or it's like things like that. And again, well-meaning, trying to be positive, but it's like haven't quite grasped what's going on here. So, but it's interesting. You said sort of you were coming at it as an outsider looking in, and that's from you as a brother, and I think that speaks a lot to a lot of the things we've discussed about couples often feeling quite isolated because it's such a difficult topic to discuss. They don't know how to discuss it with their family. Their family don't know how to discuss it with them. And I think that's a very, very common feeling with everyone we talk to. And it's really interesting to hear that from the perspective of the sort of feeling perhaps that you felt perhaps a bit cut off from the situation, not necessarily from anything that your husband and sister had done, but just because how do you reach that?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, it's the most, I would say it's like the most personal. I'm not sure if this is the right way to put it, but it's one of the most kind of personal and like kind of intimate experiences I think you can probably experience as a kind of couple, right? Like it's just, it's, and I don't think I will ever, unless I live through a similar experience, I don't think I will ever fully understand the hurt that, my sister and her husband and all of you guys would have felt at that point in time. And obviously, like there was also, I think what I imagine is, again, I haven't had this exact conversation with my sister, but, what I could see is probably, she really needed my parents there or really wanted my parents kind of thing. So I guess almost not my role, but, I kind of for myself at that point in time, it was as much as, I mean, not as much, but it was definitely supporting my parents. That could be anything, right? It could be making sure I'm there to let the dogs or look after the dogs out, or, making sure they've got a meal when they've been spending the day with, my niece and my sister and so on. And, it's kind of supporting the whole family so that, the best way that I think I can, recognizing, in the nicest way, like my sister knows I love her tremendously and everything, but there's going to be people that she needs to support her there at time. And I'll be there when the right time is there, and I'll be there whenever is needed. But at times, she's going to want her mum or dad, for example.
Yeah.
Like it just goes that way.
So true. And I think the same can be said for mates, close friends, wider family. It's sort of knowing how to make yourself available, I think, without forcing anything. I think that's the key, isn't it? And it's a grief process at the end of the day. It's the same as any other grief process, and you're going to need people there at different times and different roles, and there will come a point where it'll be, what, we just need to go and forget about it this afternoon when we need to go to the pub and just have an afternoon in the sunshine. And that's perhaps where Jonny comes in. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I just think it's, you need, I would say it's like if they ever or other people ever want to talk about it, like I'll be there to talk about it. But I think I'm probably not going to be the person to. unless I think there's an obvious point where they probably need a bit of prodding and they want to speak about it. Like, I'm not going to be that person that kind of, says, let's speak about this. That's kind of, on on the people impacted to have that conversation when the time is right. But
Yeah.
certainly if they want to have that conversation, or, they want to talk about, my sister and husband want to talk about little Ness and everything, like, I will be there to listen and everything. And I think that's kind of
Yeah, sure.
almost as much as you can do, right?
Yeah. On the topic of sort of talking about these issues, you sort of said as well it wasn't something you were overly familiar with prior to this happening, and I think that certainly was the case with me and Amy, and I think is very common for people going through this. You personally, and obviously you as a family more widely, have done a lot since through the Ness Fund and your fundraising efforts to try and help Tommies and fund that research. By virtue of that, do you find yourself talking about these things in settings now that aren't like this, a miscarriage, baby loss focused podcast? So obviously we're going to talk about it, but have you seen that, you've had these conversations with friends just outside of any sort of baby loss bubble and that you're able to open that conversation up in more not familiar settings, but just in more settings?
Yeah, I think for sure. Absolutely. Like, I would say the amount of friends, but also like, people that I would say are friends or, ex-colleagues that I worked with or acquaintances or whatever, even that, right? Like when they see you're doing fundraising for Tommy's or, sharing your story or whatever, or my sister's story in this case, I have had conversations or I have had people say, oh, we've had a loss, we've been through a similar experience or whatever. And they obviously feel ready or willing to have that conversation. And it may be that they kind of know you kind of get it a bit better or, just having. And I think some of my friends that I've had the conversation with, it may be that we're kind of coming into that age. I would say, a lot of my friends currently are expecting or have had babies recently or undoubtedly trying. And so I think it's definitely a conversation. And I would hope kind of the fundraising and kind of being a bit vocal about it and having, a bit of it on socials in various guises or whatever, or at least them knowing kind of I'm raising money for this cause, has made them more willing to speak about, their own struggles or losses that they've had. And so, yeah, I definitely think it's positive for that,
Yeah.
from that perspective, for sure.
Do you think it brings any more knowledge and understanding to those who haven't yet been through those experiences? Because I think this is the challenge that I'm sort of wrestling with, if you like. Is it possible to make awareness of the potential for miscarriage or loss more commonplace within society so that it doesn't blindside people quite as much? Because obviously you now, as you look to start a family, potentially you've got a lot of very close to home stories. But again, it's the balancing act. You want people to have some awareness, but I would hate to think that you and your wife might go into a pregnancy journey thinking, Christ, this is going to happen and this is going to happen and this is going to go wrong, because it's an exciting time as much as anything else, more so than anything else. So there's a balancing act to be had there. But I don't what are your experiences of that, if any?
I think it's almost, and obviously my experience is mostly chatting with guys, right? And, most of my friendship group is guys and stuff. So I really don't know, to be honest, whether I expect there is a better awareness that these things can happen, just because they know, if you know someone that has been through that experience or you have that kind of second person connection,
Yeah.
it works out that you have better awareness. And obviously if you don't speak about those experiences, then you don't have that awareness. So I definitely say there is, as guys still probably don't talk about as much as you should. But again, it's kind of that balance that you just said, right? It's like the last thing I want to do about speaking to people who are really trying or, expecting and stuff is that experience at that point in time. Because I definitely don't want to, yes, you're right. It's good to make people aware so they're not blindsided, but also, it's a really exciting experience and you don't want to, it's such a tough one.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure
Certainly the thing that we can do, as you say, is put out as many of these sorts of conversations as possible. Because I know that people who have had loss and who are experienced loss hopefully can find these really, really valuable. And it's about, I guess that's the primary goal. And this is obviously what you guys are focusing on, is trying to prevent these things from happening in the first place. Then it's when these things do happen to people, it's how can we support them? How can they not feel isolated, not feel cut off? I think that's where these sorts of conversations really come into their own. And a lot of the work of other groups like the Worst Girl Gang Ever and other people that we talk about a lot. I think that wider societal awareness is perhaps the pinnacle, which if we can get there eventually, then great, but we'll see. But certainly my reason for choosing Tommy's specifically, and seemingly your family's aim as well, is because they're the research charity, and they're the ones that's like, how can we, not just can we support people, but how can we stop this from happening again, understand more about how it works, and look to, yes, it's the prevention. It's the, if fewer people have miscarriages, we need to support fewer people through them. Like it's as simple as that, isn't it? So, can you tell us a little bit more about the Ness Fund and sort of how it came to be and how it's going, and like, do you have much interaction with them, that sort of thing? It really must be a really proud thing to be a part of.
Yeah, so I mean, I can't take much credit for anything like setting it up or whatever. That was it. It's very much a kind of, I think, brainchild of my sisters and my dad especially. My dad obviously loves his family to bits, and he's always can't really sit still that long. So I think he was.
Does that run in the family, Jonny, by any chance?
Yeah, it's something like that. But I think after the tragedy of losing Ness, it was kind of, he was eager to do something. I think, that goes back to Tommy's being a research charity and, contributing in some way to feel like you're doing something to change this, especially for others, right? And that obviously helps grief and everything. So they set up the Ness Fund. My dad was just in the process at the time, or had just kind of sold his business and moved into retirement and everything. So it meant we could have a bit of capital to make sure that we could support research. And that was, as a kind of first call, it was kind of decided that the first kind of portion of financing would go to essentially funding this PhD student to do research into the delayed villus maturation. But it also just recognizes that, and everyone will be familiar with this, and obviously what Tommy says, just that how the massive research deficit when it comes to, stillbirth versus other areas of medicine. So essentially that is what I think the main thing that the Ness Fund would love to do moving forwards. So we'll do that by, having capital there to try and grow it over time so it can continue to kind of fund things over time. And that includes kind of fundraising activities. So my sister does a lot. I obviously do some kind of, different physical challenges to try and do fundraising as well. But essentially, I think, look, that's what my sister and dad are very heavily involved with, I guess, where that financing goes and kind of future plans and everything. They're obviously in pretty, frequent dialogue with Tommy's about progress and everything, and where I imagine they're kind of thinking where next. But I can't say I'm heavily involved in any of the kind of day-to-day or can.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, what a cool thing though. And is the Ness Fund, is it like a subsidiary of Tommy's in some ways, or is it just that a large chunk of the funding goes to Tommy's projects?
So let me give you the legal spiel here so I don't get this wrong, but it's essentially a restricted charitable fund. So it doesn't, all the money doesn't necessarily, I think it's not written in there, it has to go to Tommy's.
Okay.
Obviously the key aim is about increasing that research and understanding of stillbirth. So for instance, when I've raised money for the events that I've done to date, that's kind of, I guess, raising money for, well, either the Ness Fund or Tommy's directly. But when we raise money for Tommy's directly, it's kind of, we're speaking to them and making sure it's kind of funneled to help fund this PhD student and the research going there. So for that purpose, any money raised through the Ness Fund then goes to kind of Tommy's to lead that research, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But, who's not to say, there could be other stuff that I guess my family decide is really worthwhile causes for this, but obviously it's all going to be informed and, through their experiences. And Tommy's is such an amazing charity. And I know, supporting my sister so much, especially in that kind of, when she got pregnant again, post a loss. So yeah, it's just the people there. I know we just, can't say anything higher about, just the most amazing people doing the most amazing work.
Amazing. And so your fundraising efforts, what have they entailed?
Yeah, so my first one was back in 2022. I did various triathlons, but finishing in an Ironman in Ireland. So that was the kind of first big event,
Cool.
first charity fundraising for the Ness Fund.
Whereabouts was that?
It's called, no, I'm getting this right. I had to correct my pronunciation of the Irish name. It's Yule, Yule. So it's on the coast near Cork.
Okay.
Incredible event, like so cool.
That's a
But
study part of the world.
yeah, we were talking about heat earlier, and I think that was like something like the hottest day on record in Yule or something at the time for like
Got to about 50.
Yeah, well, you'd think so. I think it was. I think it wasn't. It was. I think it was around 27. But the locals were amazing. They were out with their hoses while you're out on the bike and everything. So such a cool experience. So that was kind of first one, and then my next fundraising kind of big fundraising target was, well, we're 2026 now, was start of 2025, where I attempted the winter spine race, and then so raised a bit of money for that. Didn't complete it that first time around. Had to drop out after a few days, and then obviously went back to do the same race this year. So in January 2026, went back to try the winter spine again to raise money again for Tommy's. Yeah, those are the big three so far. Yeah,
they're the big ones. And like most people will know what an Ironman is. What is the spine race?
sure. So the spine race is basically a non-stop race up the Pennine Way, so in the UK. So that starts in Edale in Derbyshire, and it finishes just north of the Scottish border. So it's around 268 miles up the Pennine Way. And for anyone that has walked or run any of the Pennine Way before, you'll know it's I won't say the words, but it's a trail not made for running. It's pretty hard terrain, quite a lot of elevation and just tricky underfoot conditions. And you basically go out and
it's not a footpath, is it?
No, it's pretty horrendous. But you go out and you try and essentially you got a week to complete it, and you go out and try and do it as fast as possible. So they do a winter one and a summer one, and obviously winter is kind of second week of January, typically third week of January, and it's just obviously wintry conditions. So you get a mix of everything: rain, snow, ice, pretty horrendous conditions, and it's non-stop. So like you can obviously stop and there's checkpoints and everything, but it's you keep on going. So you kind of battle lack of sleep, just sheer, fatigue and all of that stuff. So yeah, so as much of an expedition as it is a race, and I would say a lot less running than you probably think from a running race, at least for the people like me who are closer to the back than the front, right?
I saw this year there was a guy who's I can't remember his name. He's a Spanish chap, isn't he? He'd like won it 3 or 4 times, and I was obviously tracking your progress, and he was miles ahead, and he got to within like 20 miles of the finish, and then dropped out. Yeah,
the guys at the front of this race are just absolute specimens. They're just incredible athletes, and they push. How far they push their body is just ridiculous, and it's so close to the limit. And I've got his name. His name escapes me, but he literally got to like 20 miles from the finish and got pulled out from extreme fatigue.
Okay.
And he was so far at that point in time. He was so far ahead of everyone else. I think he could have afforded to like literally have slept for like 4 hours.
Yeah.
Woken up and then finished it. But I think it just shows like at that point in time, your brain just doesn't work as well. Like you're just done.
Yeah. I'm trying to find the guy's name. Eugenie.
Yeah, Eugenie.
Soleil.
Yeah. He was really good. He was a really lovely guy. Funny enough, I stayed in a hostel in Edale the night before. And I had a brief chat with him, because I was like, his bag was tiny, because you have to carry a lot of your equipment, and his bag was tiny. And I was like, how is it that small tonight? And he was just like cracking on. I saw him the night before and he was having a beer, and I was just like, I had no idea he was the like favorite to win it, right?
Yeah.
I was just like, this guy's cracking on with a beer like night before. And I was like, oh, yeah, amazing athlete. Like the guys that win and kind of lead that stuff are just such incredible athletes. It's ridiculous.
Well, but also those that finish it, Jonny, or indeed do 4 days of it one year and then you have to pull out and think, you know what, I'm going to go and have another crack. Like that to me is nuts. How do you train for that?
I think everyone's going to be a bit different, but certainly for myself, who I would say I'm not built like a runner, probably on the heavier side to like most runners. So like I probably was hovering around like 90 kg for the race.
Mm.
Like there's actually a lot of, I would say, a load more strength training than you would probably think, and probably less running than you would probably think. Obviously, long hikes, quite a lot of hills if you can. Obviously, quite a bit of running in there as well, but loads and loads of strength training. So I actually would say when I got into my training program and a really good coach and stuff, like I actually got a lot stronger and actually ended up putting on quite a bit of weight because I was just doing a lot more strength exercises. Yeah, that was the kind of big surprise.
But yeah, I guess if you're putting on weight in that way, it's no bad thing, is it? If you're adding muscle to carry the weight, then you're all right on there. I think it's when similarly did a lot of strength work last year because carrying the key this year is, as I guess the spine as well, is a bit more of a speed element, I guess, to what you were doing, because you've got to keep up with your timings and stuff. But there's no time pressure for me this year. I've just got to get through it, and so I've got to not get injured. So that was the key. So I was working with the physio all through last year. Like, how do we not get injured? And it's all strength work. And I think there's probably something in that for marathon runners more generally, or longer distance athletes more generally. I think a lot of people neglect the strength work and think if I do lots and lots of running, I'll be fine. But making everything strong and robust is like, I eat now. I'm supposed to run a couple of times in the week. I've got a 4-month-old, so I don't always get out as much as I'd like to. But the session I don't miss ever is my gym session. I still go in the gym doing strength work once a week just to keep everything ticking over. And you feel so good for it, don't you, when you then get back out running again?
For sure. And like I would definitely say, like, I would love to be a better runner. And I think in the future, like, I definitely would like to be a faster runner. I'm definitely not the most gifted runner. So like, you know, when I would say for the spine, for example, like I was, you know, doing a decent chunk of running. Obviously, like the terrain kind of tells you what pace you go at and everything. Decent amount of running, maybe over the first 2 days. After that, it's dealing with injuries, dealing with your equipment, and just keep on moving. So you just basically end up, well, for me at least, it was keep on moving as long as possible. Didn't sleep a lot. So it was probably about 9 hours of sleep over the week. So you're just moving. And at that point, you know, the paces you're going at is incredibly slow. Like you probably couldn't even call it a march or a walk, right? Like it's more of a crawl.
And is that 9 hours? Is that because you chose to sleep for a shorter period of time? Or is it just that when you get to a point where you can get some sleep, you lie down, close your eyes, and it's like, this is pointless. It's freezing. I'm buzzing with adrenaline. Like, I just want to crack on.
It's a bit of both. Like, because I was on the slower end of the field, like I couldn't sleep for a lot longer. It was also impacted by similar to where I dropped out last year. I had I guess it wasn't a bad injury, but essentially rolled my ankle probably around. The conditions in the first 2 days were brutal, like icy, super windy and stuff. The rivers that you had to cross were often coming up to like hip depth and that kind of stuff. So I rolled my ankle probably like 5 times. And you know, when you roll an ankle, when you kind of just hurts quite a lot straight away, but then you walk it off and you're like, it's fine. What I realized is if you do that time and time again over like a 48-hour period, essentially all those kind of micro traumas build up. So my ankle just blew up in size. Fortunately, the medical staff on that race are incredible. And they were just like, you know, I think you go into it thinking medics are there to like pull you out and everything, but they were very good at saying like, you shouldn't really cause any more damage if you keep on going. Like this isn't a stress fracture or something like that.
Just look where you're going.
Yeah. And they were basically like, so we'll strap you up. So they strapped me up and I was like, I still really didn't. And it's amazing how different you feel going into a checkpoint. And then once you had a bit of time to dry off, maybe catch like 30 minutes sleep and then eat, like how better you feel. But at that point, I was like, I'll go to the next checkpoint or next monitoring point, which I think was like 16, 19 miles or something,
Hmm.
see how I feel. And I got to that checkpoint and they were, the medics fortunately kind of saw I was in quite a lot of pain. So from that point, which was about 3, 4 days in, they just started giving me codeine for the rest of the week. So that helped a lot. But at that point, it was just, in my mind, it was very much like my wife's going to hate me if I come back for a third year. So
Yeah.
I really need to get this done this year. So at that point, it wasn't about speed. I mean, it was about speed, but it was like going fast enough to finish within the time period. I didn't care if I finished last at that point. Like there was no thing of that. It was just to make sure I finished. So it was quite a slow pace. And
Yeah.
therefore you have to give up a bit of sleep. But also like I'm quite a light sleeper. You would think you can get a good few hours at each checkpoint. In truth, those checkpoints are busy. You're in a dorm room. There's always a few snorers.
Yeah.
People's alarms are going off every, 15 half minutes, half an hour to wake them up to get back out there. Like a few of them, I just, I lay down to try and sleep and just nothing. So actually the best sleeps I had were, sounds pretty rank, but best sleeps I had was in the floor of public toilets along the way. So just,
Nice,
curling
nice
up
and
in
quiet.
a pile of piss.
Yeah.
It's pretty rank,
Excellent.
but yeah.
I've got a couple of mates who did a cycle race a few years back, which is Paris-Brest Paris. So it's Paris to the west coast of France and back again, basically. And it's 1200k. And I think you've got about 3-4 days to do it in. I can't remember exactly, but they have checkpoints with like camp beds set up in like a sports hall at a local school or something. And they said that on the way out, they had their checkpoints planned. And on the way back, they actually just slightly different affair because it's in July. So, but they would just sort of find a nice grassy verge, park their bikes up and have a sleep there because it was peaceful and it was quiet. And you could actually get a solid half an hour, 45 minutes, whatever, and then crack on again.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, just nuts. So cool. Like, well done. That's incredible. Do you look back on it now and go, I'm so pleased, or like, I'm so proud that I did that? Or do you look at it and go, that was the stupidest thing I've ever done in my life?
I think there's definitely honestly, I would like during it, like I spent a bit of time with a few people along the way, like you end up similar pace, you walk or run with for quite a few hours and stuff. So you talk and everything. And I remember at the time just being like, this is horrendous. Like, especially the last kind of 3-4 days every step was painful. It was just like, it was pretty agonizing. You're tired, cold, everything. So you just want to go home. Once you're done, obviously you have the kind of sense of achievement, but you also start forgetting about a lot of the bad times. And you start remembering, it's an incredible, like, I would say anything, those big kind of adventures and stuff it's just such a privilege to be able to kind of go and put your body through that and be able to do it. And then like, I just don't get, and this is part of the reason, I'm not the greatest runner, but I like running. And part of it is just being able to kind of disconnect from everything. And for that week, I didn't worry about work. I didn't, have any other worries. I didn't think too much except like keep on moving forward.
Yeah.
And it just makes for a super simple life for a bit, for a week. And there's something quite
so difficult and so complicated in so many ways. But I know what you mean. It's just and I think that's there's parallels to that with what we're doing in that the podcasts, the editing, the Instagram posts, the logistics, the where's everyone going to stay, how long am I going to be away for if I'm going, all that sort of stuff is quite full on and quite hard work. But actually, when I get to the start line on Saturday or Sunday and we just go and run for 4, 5, 6, however many hours it is, it's so, like, yes, there's bits like the last 10 miles can get hard. Sometimes it's 27 degrees. Sometimes it's pissing with rain. Sometimes it's hilly, and there's the physical challenge to overcome. But actually for those, I know exactly what you mean. For those 4 or 5 hours, life is so simple. It's just like the goal is get to 26 miles. That's it. That's all you have to worry about. And obviously 26 is a hell of a lot less than 260. And
well, I have to say for you to, I just like, I know you said which was harder, but I can't imagine having the commitment to do 39 weeks. Like that is just, as you said, everything that comes with it as well. But, to be frank, since like I had to put my feet up for a couple of months because of injuries that I had post the race, but I've really struggled with, even knowing this is coming up and obviously a cause that I care deeply about, I've really struggled to get out there and train and the motivation to do that, to to keep on turning up for 39 weeks. And obviously all the prep that you did leading into that 39 weeks and is incredible. So yeah, I'm in awe.
Likewise. I maybe hear of these things other people do and I'm like, oh, maybe I'll give that a go. And then I remember my marriage and put them back in a box for a little bit.
Yeah, no, I've definitely got to take maybe a couple of years off.
Yeah, fair. Tell us about this Saturday coming up in London. What are we doing? Where are we going? What's the plan? And why are we in London? Why are we not in Gloucestershire? So
yeah, we are doing the Surrey leg. So yeah, we're going to start in Battersea Park, finishing in Walton-on-Thames. And Walton-on-Thames is where my sister and her family live. So it seems very right to finish there. And that's obviously in Surrey.
Yeah.
So yeah, amazing that we can do it there. But, I know we both have ties to London and have friends there and everything. So it will be really nice setting off at Battersea Park and hopefully a really nice run along the river, assuming no diversions and we don't have to go through any of the dark depths of London. But
it should be mostly along the river. I've cycled that a fair bit. You can stick to the river fairly well.
Yeah, it's that fairly that I'm worried about.
Yeah. And if you have to divert, it's normally because you've reached a major settlement. Like if we have to run up Richmond High Street or something and stop at Gales for a snack, I'm all for that. So. As long as diversions, that's the word I'm looking for. Profitable is not the right word, but you know what I mean? If we get something out of them.
Yeah. Well, also I liked the route as well because I thought had in my mind it would be completely flat. But we saw the GPX bar, right? And it says, I can't remember exactly how much, but it was giving us pretty good elevation in it as well. Which I can't imagine's right, but
no. Yeah. There was one point where it really spiked. So I'm sort of guessing that was a GPS brain fart. Yeah. But let's have a look. When I sent it to Will, who does all our maps for us, he was like, "This looks like a really friendly route." And then I looked at it because it was basically net downhill. I was like, "Yeah, that was all right." And I think you plotted it from finish to start rather than start to finish. But I mean, the total elevation gain, Jonny, is 131 feet. So I think
that's fine.
I think we'll be okay. Unless sometimes when it pulls in as feet when it should actually be meters. So like worst case is 130 meters, which again fine. I think we'll cope with.
Yeah. So perfect. Should be hopefully a dry but cool day, and then flat course and along the river should be
There's a little hill there. What's that? That's Kingston. I reckon that's because we need to go over a bridge.
Yeah.
That's it. This is where we might need to readjust because we can't cross the river. Because if we cross the river, we're in the wrong county. So Will might have tweaked this route a little bit and messed around with it. But anyway, we'll figure that out. Before...
Well, if he's found us less elevation, I'm all for it. So.
No, I think he's put some in because we've had to go up and over a bridge. So if we get rid of those bridges, A, we stay in the right county, and B, we cut the elevation down. Yeah, no, it'll be good fun. And if anyone's out and about in London and wants to come and join us, we'll be making some noise on social media about it in the run up and let you know where we are. I think Battersea Park's a bit of a running mecca these days, so we might just by default have thousands of people there with us. But yeah, no, it'll be a good day out, and obviously great to finally meet you, Jonny. And congratulations again on all of your stuff. It's fantastic, and I hope the Ness Fund continues to be a success, and we'll look forward to seeing those PhD results when they come out.
Awesome. No, looking forward to it, and yeah, thank you so much. And as I said, what you're doing, but everyone that's done it so far and will do it, like stories have been amazing, and just in awe of all of you. So yeah, absolutely, honor, pleasure to be part of it.
Cheers, mate. We'll see you soon.
Cheers, Ollie.
Bye.